Hello, everybody. Good morning. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So thanks everybody for coming in today morning to our session on Get Set Geektrust, where we talk about, uh, give you an orientation about how to use Geektrust and talk to you about how to write good, clean code. Before we start, a quick introduction to myself and Geektrust. My name is Krishnan. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at Geektrust. Uh, I used to work at ThoughtWorks earlier. I was there for about 10 years. Left ThoughtWorks and started up with Geektrust about 7.5 years ago now. It's getting close. Like recently, one of my friends was telling me that you have spent almost as much time as Geektrust as you have been at ThoughtWorks. But you know what, when you run a startup, time just flies. I didn't believe, I mean, I couldn't believe that it's been 7.5 years since I've started up. So who is Geektrust? We are a 100-member company. We are based out of Bangalore. We are a technology hiring platform. We work with 100 plus companies looking to hire software developers like yourselves. And we have more than 150,000 developers registered with us. So that's a quick overview about me and about Geektrust. So I want to get started by asking you all something. And if you can put in the chat, that would be great. Uh, Whenever you look for a job, right? What's the who's the chief player in this? When you're looking for a job, there is something in this which is, the primary activity, the first thing that you do. Can you guess what it is? Just put it in the chat if you can guess. What is that one thing that we all start getting down to? Any guesses? Okay, somebody says resume. Any other guesses? Skills, refresh resume, skill set. Great. Portfolio. That's a good answer. Yeah, I mean, all these are correct, but the primary thing is people will ask you, do you have your resume? Right? Do you have your resume ready? And how many of us actually like to create a resume? I mean, I can speak for myself. I don't like creating a resume. I think I've created my resume once in my life. Yeah, I mean, nobody likes creating a resume, right? But unfortunately, the resume is the most important thing till now. And I'll talk about how we are trying to break that. But the resume ends up being the most important thing for you in your job search. Can you create a, a document which best represents yourself? It's not easy to do. I know a lot of really, really good developers, and they swear to me I cannot build my own resume, right? But unfortunately, that is the state of the market today, where a lot of things are driven by a resume. And when I say driven by the resume, who thinks? I mean, I don't think that anybody can create a traditional resume which actually articulates your skill sets. I've seen some really good resumes, but even with that, it really doesn't clearly give a representation of your real skill set. It is only, I mean, here we say the resume is only half the picture. I don't think it is even half the picture. It is much lesser, right? The resume doesn't really give yourself the satisfaction that, hey, what I am, who I am as a person, what I bring to the table, what skill set I have, all that does not get reflected in the resume. 80% of candidates are rejected based on resumes alone. Forget, they don't even get to the point where they have a chance to talk about their skill or their capabilities. No, they just get rejected based on the resume. And I will, as I walk you through this quick orientation session, I'll tell you how we at Geektrust are trying to change that with what we are calling the new resume. I'll talk about the new resume in a bit, but this is the old typical resume. I want to give a couple of examples. Yeah, I think I see Srisha saying this is true. 100%. I've been in this space for 7 years now, recruitment, right? And looking at a resume and trying to identify if this developer really has good skill sets is a shot in the dark, right? And you juxtapose that with this is the starting point for you to find any job. It seems very, very unfair. I want to talk about a couple of stories of people, their resumes, and how Geektrust was able to help them with what we are calling the new resume. Uh, this is Malay Mehta. He's one of our early users, probably from 2016, 2017 times when we had just started. He studied in a Gujarati medium school. He worked out of Ahmedabad. His resume didn't look great. How many companies will shortlist this candidate? Very few will. And even if they shortlist on the first screening call, you hear broken English or not super fluent in English, and you don't clear the HR screening itself. Every developer worth their salt knows that not being able to speak English and not being able to write good code are not linked. You might not speak fluently in our second language, which is English, but you will still be able to write great Java code. And Malay was a good example of that. Malay could write good code, however, his resume nor his initial conversations reflected that. So what we helped Malay do is join a really hardcore technology startup, a SaaS B2B startup based on the new resume. I'll come to the new resume in a bit. This is Malay's story. These are all true stories. These are people who have, you can go read up their developer stories as well on Geektrust, where you can see in more detail or read in more detail what he's done. This is another example. I've met him as well. He had Shashadru had come to our office as well at one point. He worked in support, but he was very clear that support is not my true calling. He wanted to get to software development. Every time he would send his resume across for a software developer role, as you can guess, he wouldn't get shortlisted because I'm looking for a software developer. Here is a support engineer coming and telling me that I want to be in software development. No. So he used to get rejected everywhere as well. So again, here, Geektrust, we at Geektrust were lucky enough that he found us and he was lucky that we found him. He came on board, he created the new resume, and he was able to find a job where he was building the Google Home device. He was working on software that supported the Google Home device. He was working with a partner that was working deeply integrated with the Google team and building like high-end technology. I think it's very, very clear that you are bigger than your resume. I think for all of us, this is true. There's not a single person in the world whose resume really reflects what they do, right? And it's going to be very hard to create one that reflects who you are as a person, what your skill sets are at, and so on. But the current resume, it's very clear to all of us. At least to me, it is very clear that it does not do us justice, and it's time to change that. I don't know how many decades we've been using the old resume as the way to find jobs, and that's just absolutely not right. We have Dibin on call right now, actually. So this is another story I love to talk about, but luckily you don't have to hear me. You can hear Dibin directly on what was his experience using Geektrust. So Dibin, if you can just share a few words and thoughts around your background, what you have done, how you use Geektrust, and where you're at today, that would be great.
Sounds good, Krishna. A lot of stories you just shared gave me deja vu because I was one of them not quite long ago. Like I myself started from like a small college and I did civil engineering actually, not even like IT. And after that, I tried like sending out resumes to a bunch of companies. Before that, like I ended up in like an MNC where I was in a support role as well for 4 months. And then when I realized it's not something for me, I resigned. And then I started studying by myself. This was during the peak of pandemic where people were not getting job opportunities. So resigning from a job I had was like a big step and convincing family was difficult. After that, I spent like 8 to 9 months learning like courses by myself. And then my resume was terrible. Like you can guess, right? It shows like civil engineer and has like an 8, 9 month gap, has no real like certification or anything to show for. I got rejected from like multiple places. Like an entire month went where I sent out resumes to like 40, 50 websites and companies and whatever. Rarely heard callbacks. And even then, the HR would not be very pleased. And then, fortunately, somehow I came across Geektrust. And the thing about Geektrust was there are other websites as well which will ask you to solve a coding challenge. But over there, they just care about the end result. Like, does your code build? Do you get the answer? But at Geektrust, it focuses on the most important part. Like, do you do it the right way? Like, is your code clean? Is it scalable? Because that is what the industry really needs. And if you just have code which gives you the answer, the problem with that is there's no way for the HR or the person behind the resume to know if you actually wrote it or if you just picked it up from somewhere. because it's not that difficult. And now with Chat GPT and everything, it's really easy to just find solutions to questions. But clean code is something that it reflects the developer's coding style. And with Geektrust, like I remember, like I came across it. I was not aware what clean coding was, and it took me like a couple of days to like go online and read up on resources and watch videos, and it was a very interesting topic. Like if anyone here is not aware of it, I would highly recommend they get familiar with it, because that's what like makes your code better. Like it sets you apart from all the other developers by like a huge margin. And yeah, so once I learned what clean coding was, I used like, I went on Geektrust and I, did some code submissions. So the first submission was the hardest, because like at no point did I feel like my code was good enough. Like you would write code and you'd be like, is it clean? Is it clean? Like it would work, but then like I wasn't sure if it was clean enough. And then I just decided to like, just commit and like submit my code and see what happens. So I submitted, and as expected, it wasn't great. But the Geek Trust like facility is very helpful. Like they send you back with like feedback, and I've heard like nowadays it's like instantaneous. Like it comes back in like 5 minutes. So you immediately see where all you can improve, and they give you resources as well. So you can go read upon it, and then like you can commit once more, like submit the code again, and you can keep on doing that a couple of times. And every time your code keeps on getting a little bit cleaner, a bit better, which like really helped. And then like once my code was out there, no one was looking at my resume anymore. So nobody knew I was a civil engineer. Nobody had that bias, because like most people are biased. Like you show them a resume with like ABC facts. That's what they're gonna focus on. They don't really care about like. Well, there's no way for them to know your skill sets. So to be very honest, like that is the only piece of information they have. With the Geektrust code submission, they can actually see your code and see how you think. It gives them a very clear insight into what kind of a developer you are and if you're a good fit for them. And I think that helped me, like, find my ideal job for now.
Hey, thanks, Dibin. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're working today?
Right now, I'm working at a startup which is like about 3 years old called Jiva. Basically, what we do is we work with smallholder farmers in Indonesia. And what we do is we actually help real farmers, raise crops and sell it. So what happens over there is most of the smallholder farmers, they're like not familiar with like the logistics of like when to like, plant the seeds and take the crops, where to get the best price for. So with Jiva, we make sure like that entire process, right from like the sowing of the seeds till the collection of harvest, it's like streamlined, and it makes it easier for them. So we've actually like, helped farmers increase their revenue by like 4 times. And we help like we're trying to solve a problem which has existed in society for a very long time. And like to be part of a team which gets to do it so early was like really great.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks, Dibin, for sharing your story. Very much
Yes.
appreciated. And just to note that it's not just about finding a job. It's also about finding a job that helps you do some real impact, right? That's what we are
Hmm.
aiming for. To not just give you an opportunity, but multiple opportunities. I think you had multiple opportunities, right, Dibin, if I remember right?
Yes, thanks to Geektrust. Like before that, companies wouldn't reach out to me, and I had to keep reaching out. After the code submissions, companies would reach out to me. So I do remember the day where I actually had to like ask an interviewer to like reschedule the call because I just had too many calls that one day. And I
Awesome.
got like a few offers through Geektrust as well. And like, so it was a very different dynamic, like from being rejected by companies to actually turning down offers because you felt like you could do better. And like really thankful to and grateful to Geektrust for giving me that power and like that opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot, Dibin. Thanks for taking the
Yeah,
time out to
thank
speak
you.
to us.
Mm.
So we have heard stories, we have seen what it can do. Now let me bring it together and to the point of the session to give you an orientation about how to use Geektrust, right? So as you would have guessed by now, we don't believe in using the old resume to find jobs. What we believe is in building the new resume, which is a combination of your expertise plus your experience and actual manifestation of your skill sets, right? What does this mean? This means at Geektrust, you come not to upload your profile, but also to upload your code. Luckily for us as developers, we are in a space where our skills can be objectively defined to some sense. It's not 100%, but to a large degree, you can objectively showcase your skills. So what we ask for you at Geektrust to do is to come on board, create your profile, upload your resume, but also write code. This helps us build the new resume, what you see over here. This helps us build the new resume for you, which then goes to companies. When you and the most important aspect in all of this is writing the code, like what Dibin had mentioned. And when I say writing the code, it is not about getting the output right. In the real world, if you folks have worked in software development, you have experience, you know this. The first thing you're likely to do when you start working is you have to be able to read code. Very, very few of us get into a job where we are writing code from scratch, right? We always get into a job where software development is you have to read code that somebody else wrote, which means you hope and pray that that person who wrote it well, that you can read it, right? So that is fundamentally the concept of Geektrust. Can you write code that others can read and understand, what we call clean code? Because in the real world, that is what matters. It is not fancy data structures. It is not about getting the logic right in 30 minutes. It is about, can you write code that your colleague can read and understand 6 months later? So on Geektrust, what you can do is you can come, choose a coding challenge of your choice, or in some cases, we'll ask you what to solve, but mostly you can choose a coding challenge of your choice and write clean code. Our USP and what Dibin was talking about earlier is we are able to give you instantaneous feedback on the quality of your code as well. We'll show snippets of your code or examples of your code where we think you've not followed clean code and give you inputs on how to correct it. We have articles written on how to get better at writing clean code. The overall objective, like I think somebody was mentioning in the chat earlier, is to build a portfolio of your skills, not just a Word document which says X, Y, or Z. All right. So this is the concept of the new resume. It combines your experience, it brings in your expertise, and puts in manifestation of your actual skills. So what does it do? It indicates your code competency. So over here, as you can see, I think we've just randomly picked a resume of Devesh. There's a Geektrust summary that we provide, which is a short snippet of what Devesh has done. But below that, what you see is a summary of your coding skills. That's the first thing we start with. Imagine you're sending a resume to a startup or a really tier one MNC, and they're not reading your past first. They're not seeing that you did civil engineering in the Bin's case. They're actually seeing your coding skills. You're looking at what badges have you earned, what language did you code in, and you can even click on it and view the code that was written. Then comes the skills, and in many cases, we are building a new feature where we will actually help you interview as well. You will interview. It won't be like a client, a company interview, but an interview with the Geektrust community, where the community will give feedback on your skills as well. So it is a better representation. So there is code. There are some interview notes about what you have done, and then a very detailed report on your code too. So while we gave the code summary earlier, it also has the detailed report talking about the different aspects of clean code and what specifically you did in that. Code is easily understandable, submission is well structured, as you can see the examples here, the code has minimal complexity, and so on. So this is what Geektrust is able to do for you with the new resume. And this is, in my books, 10x better than just getting a Word document which talks about what you've done in the past. This showcases your true potential. So if there is one thing that you should remember about Geektrust as you start using our product, it is that you need to go build a new resume. And to build a new resume, you need to write code, and we will support you in writing code. So this aspect covers, in our orientation piece, this aspect covers one key part, which is write code, build a new resume. End of the day, creating the resume alone is not enough. Creating the new resume alone is not enough. You need to go out there and find jobs as well. And what we are trying to do with full honesty and integrity is to try and build the world's most transparent jobs platform. Typically, most jobs platforms, you apply and you don't hear back. We are trying to solve that. We are trying to make sure you get feedback on your application. We're trying to make sure recruiters shortlist your profile. And I think we will do a session in a bit where you'll see a little bit about how to apply for jobs and so on. So first part is the building a new resume. The second part is the transparency of a platform, getting feedback, applying to jobs. Uh, at any point, if you're stuck, we have a team of account managers who's got your back and give you support. So these are some of my colleagues who work at Geektrust. Uh, any point you're confused, you're not sure what to do, we have the support available for you to pick up the phone, talk to somebody, and figure out what you need to do next. In fact, I have Jayashree on the call as well today. So Jayashree, can you quickly give us some thoughts on, what does your typical conversation with the developer look like, and how do you help him or her identify the best opportunity?
Hey, hi. Hi, good morning, all. So, as Krishnan said, typically when a HR looks into a resume, so we look if the candidate has completed his education properly, if he or she has a career gap, then why, what, reason, everything. But typically in Geek Trust, that is not what we look for. We actually look these things at the end. That is if that is again on demand, but typically when we look at especially candidate who's registered in Geek Trust and who have taken the coding challenge, we will be able to match their coding ability with the expectation of the client. So if for example, let's say Jiva, if they are expecting for a person who really wants who has to code in Java, and if I have a profile in front of me, so I will look into that. I will just check if the candidate has taken the coding challenge in Java, what parameters if he or she has actually covered. So all these things will be a better selling for us when we actually approach the resume to the client. So that way client is not rejecting a profile seeing just a piece of a paper, right? So we are able to sell the code portfolio to them, asking, hey, you were looking for a candidate who wants to write a code, who wants to be a part of your development team, so we have it ready. So we have a candidate who's ready, who can write a code which is production ready, maybe, or who can be a part of your team from the day one. You can just evaluate his skills based on his code, not based on his resume. That's what we look for each and every time. And I can say I have a very successful story as well. So I do not want to name the candidate or the company, but I would say I came across a profile where she had a 6 years career gap. So and then she happened to see Geek Test and she took up a coding challenge, and 6 years career gap, a year or two also company would not agree, but 6 years career gap we could sell her based on the code. And she's working in a very good company right now as a software developer, being a mom to a beautiful child. But we were able to place her just by the code that she has written. So that way we get the confidence and the trust from the client as well.
Great. Thanks, Jayashree. And Jayashree, just to clarify for our participants here, you also will help with interview prep to tell them what to expect, any questions on the company, all that you will help with, right?
Yes, how it goes is as and when we share the resume of the client, candidate, and with his code. So we generally do not stop our process there, right there. So we get into the understanding of what exactly the panel would ask the candidate, what sort of round it's going to be, what is the pattern of the interview, all these details. I think we will spend almost 10-15 minutes time with a candidate explaining these process. So for example, if your very first round is a code pairing round, what it's going to be, what sort of extension you might expect on the code that is written, on what competencies you will have to be good at, all these things we will actually prepare. So that really helps candidates in order to prepare well. And it's not that we got an update from the client and we will schedule the candidates right after an hour. So we give them enough time to prepare. We understand their availability properly. So we equally respect both client and candidates time. So when they both are available, only then we will be able to schedule. And immediately after the first round, we will get back to the client and we will understand how the candidate performed, where he was wrong, where he was right. So see, one more thing I would like to highlight here is, not all the resumes that is shared to the client in other portals, or in many places, not all the HRs will come back to you with the feedback stating that you're rejected or you're selected. So here, what we do is, that is one more thing when we talk about the transparent communication. Even if you are rejected, we will come back and tell you why you're rejected and how you can improve. So they usually tell HR will ghost us not giving us feedback, but we are not like that. We generally come back to people and tell why you were not able to make that particular round, what was wrong. And we have seen success. The same candidate after 3 months would clear the round, would improve, and all those things. So that feedback conveying is very important, which we take care of. And we will be with it will be handholded by us till they join the company. And even after they are onboarded, we will still be in touch with the candidates. So right from the first screening and making a match to the company, sending their profile to the company, coming back and telling what they will have to do for the couple of rounds. And understanding if the candidate has really liked the opportunity, if yes, why, if no, why, all these things. It's not only about getting them a job, right? That should also make some sense. Their traits should match. That's what we really look for in Geektrust. It's not the generic way how others works. We work very differently. I would proudly say the feedback is conveyed on time.
Thanks a lot, Jayashree.
Yeah.
So, thanks. So, Jayashree's update really gives us a sense of, it's not just about what you see on geektrust.com. There is also great human support that you get at Geektrust. And speaking of support, any point you're stuck somewhere, you can reach out to us, Mamta, Dennis, Shreya. We are all available on WhatsApp, on this. We have a Discord channel as well, and so on. These numbers are available on our site, so you don't need to note this down. You can figure this out. So you get support from our team. We also have a community. So once you start using Geektrust, we have a community where the community helps us create coding challenges. Some folks in the community help us evaluate the coding challenges. There are folks who do interviews. So there are folks who mentor. So there's lots of opportunities for you to be involved with the Geektrust community as well, which we will, as you register on Geektrust, and we'll reach out to you to see how and where you can help with. Okay, so now so to summarize, we help you find jobs by building your new resume. And the new resume is not just a Word document with where you worked, but it is an expression of your potential, of your skill set, and in some cases, conversations you have had with Geektrust community members and so on. Along with this, you get fantastic human support. If you have questions, anything you want to get answered, everything. What I'm going to do next, we have two sessions left. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Namrita, who's a principal product manager at Geektrust. She's going to show a demo about how the job search works. After that, we'll actually do a session on how to build the new resume using clean code. Right? We'll talk about how do you write clean code. We'll focus on the clean code aspect in the last session. Before that, I'm going to hand over to Namrita. Namrita, you can take over.
Thank you, Krishnan. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So today I am going to walk you all through how to accelerate your job search using the Geektrust platform. Just before I get started, Dennis, could we launch a poll? So I'm very curious to know, what are you looking forward to understand more about the Geektrust platform? So we could just have that poll up. So just take a minute and just let me know so that I can sort of talk about that area in a little more detail. Yeah, we'll wait for about a minute for everyone to answer the poll. I hope you can all see it on your screen. All right, we'll just give it a few more seconds. Okay, so I think I'll end the poll now. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a sense of where we all are today. So I think most people want to get a sense of how to find the right opportunities, how to solve a Geektrust coding challenge, and all of the above. So great, that's what I'm going to cover in detail, and so is my colleague Anish. So let's just get right to it then. So I'm just going to share my screen. I hope everyone can see it. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that all of you have logged into the Geektrust platform and have explored a little bit about what is available. But I'm just going to walk you through it in a lot more detail, right? So the first and most important thing on Geektrust is to keep your profile up to date, right? So you can go right up here and you can click on my profile and come here and fill in all your profile details. And this is super critical because it helps us match you with the right kind of opportunity. And we match you based on the right opportunities, based on your years of work experience, your primary skills, and the kind of role you currently play and you aspire to play, right? So you need to come in here, enter your primary role, your years of work experience, your primary tech skills. These would be the tech skills that you're most comfortable with and that you tend to use in your current job, right? Or the skills that you might have spent time honing over time. And the additional skills would be things that you might have dabbled with a little bit through your experience in your career so far. You also upload your resume, but like everyone's been talking about today, that's just one part of the job search journey. It's not the entire thing, right? So upload your resume, and then you move into putting in your personal info and links. So do let us know your current location. Do let us know of your phone number as well, because we do send some personalized updates and critical updates on WhatsApp if you're open to receiving them. But of course, we never spam you with anything. So do make sure you put in your WhatsApp, your phone number, so that we can reach out to you. And it also helps when the account manager tries to contact you to schedule interviews, etc. You can further enrich your profile by providing us your LinkedIn account, your GitHub account details, right? And then the next part of your profile is your employment timeline and your education timeline. So you can go in, add your work experience, tell us where you worked, tell us the position you played, the type of company you worked at, whether it's a product company, a startup, etc., when you started working there, and whether you're currently working there or not. Right. And you can also tell us a little bit about your education timeline. So, where did you go to school? Where did you go to college, etc. Right. So you can enter all of this. This just helps enrich your profile a little bit more. And then you can give us your links, any links and attachments, right? If you've written papers, you've written blogs that you think truly represent some of the work that you've done outside of your current job, you can go in and add that as well. And again, these are things that we will take to present a more holistic picture of you to the companies that we put your profile in front of. And then this is an important piece, right? So it matters what you want to do. So do tell us what kind of role you want to play at the next company. For example, tell us what is your preferred role. Do you want to be a backend engineer? Do you want to be a full stack engineer? Right? What domains are you interested in? Like, does fintech pique your curiosity? So if so, you can tell us that you want to work in fintech, or you want to work in e-commerce or edtech maybe. You can tell us a little bit about tech you'd like to work on, right? So maybe you want to work on, I don't know, JavaScript frameworks. Maybe you want to work on blockchain, right? So you can tell us a little bit about what you want to work on. And you can tell us where you want to work, right? Do you want to work in Bangalore, Pune, Delhi? We have opportunities all over the country. We also have some remote opportunities and some opportunities in UK, for example, right? So you can tell us a little bit about where you want to work. And finally, I think you could also tell us, like, what your work from office preference is. Are you okay with a hybrid work model? Are you okay with, do you want to only work remotely, or do you want to work from the office, right? So you can tell us all of this. And all of this plays a big part when we try to find the right opportunity for you, because it really matters where you want to work and how you want to work as well, right? And then you can also give us your expectations in terms of, you can also tell us your expectations in terms of what else would you like on the job, right? So do you want to work in a company where you have more opportunities for mentorship or social impact? Would you like to be a manager? Would you like to work in a product company or a services company, right? So you can tell us all of this as well. And finally, tell us a little bit more about your salary expectations and your notice period, so that, again, we can find the right kind of opportunities for you. Towards the end, you have also the ability to control your communication preferences, meaning you can tell us how we can reach out to you, right? So, for example, we host a lot of events like this orientation workshop, for example, and we tend to have company-sponsored events where we tie up with companies and put up opportunities as well. So you can tell us if you want to know about these events and upcoming workshops that we run, or if you want to know about curated, handpicked opportunities that can get delivered right to your inbox, right? So you can decide what we reach out to you for as well. And like I said, you can give us consent on whether we can send you WhatsApp messages. We highly recommend doing this. And like I said, it's only critical updates that will reach you on WhatsApp, right? So this is the first step in your job search on Geektrust, right? Keeping your profile completely up to date. Now, the next thing that you can do on Geektrust is applying for jobs, right? So when you come here, you can access your jobs dashboard, and based on your preferences, we have pre-filtered jobs that are available for you. And if you note, we've also, if you notice, we've also gone ahead and matched you with the right kind of opportunities based on, your current profile, right? So you'll see that there are a lot of jobs available here, and that some jobs are a high match or highly recommended for you. Some jobs are a good match. And then you also have some jobs where you may not really be a match based on the profile that you've filled in. Right. So given that, I'm just going to walk you through the whole process of applying to a job on Geektrust. So let me pick a job. So you'll see that here we tell you everything about the job, right? So this is a senior Java engineer job for 3 to 8 years of experience in Bangalore, which is open to remote working. So when you see this, you can go ahead and apply to the job. So you'll see all the details about the job here. So you can see, what kind of responsibilities. You'll also get a little bit of insight into the interview process as well as you go through this. So when you go ahead and apply to this job, so we take you through a 4-step application process by which you can put in all the details. This is, again, a mini version of the profile that you would have filled in. But if there's something you haven't filled in, this is a great opportunity to put in, right? So you can first go in and put in your basic details. Then you can attach your resume if you haven't already, put in your primary skills, and then give us more information about your current employer, your current experience, your work from office preferences. And then finally, you can confirm your notice period and your current salary, right? So I'm just going to make a quick change, right? Now I apply to the job, and this is where the Geektrust platform truly, espousing our philosophy, right? We truly give you that transparency along the way. So if you see, I applied to Geektrust. Now, in most other platforms, what will happen is you'll apply and then it goes into a black hole, right? And you wait for days and weeks to hear back as to whether your profile is going to be selected or not. But we tell you instantaneously if it's going to be rejected. So here you can see that we're telling you that your application to Geektrust is likely to get rejected. So you can go in and really see why, right? So I go down and I see that, okay, so the company I applied to was Geektrust, and I applied in the position of a senior Java engineer. And it tells me that Geektrust requires candidates to be skilled in Java and Spring Boot. So, okay, I can now think, do I have experience in Spring Boot or not? I actually do, but I just forgot to put it on my profile, right? And the thing is, when you apply based on a resume, and HR is probably just going to look through a resume and look for whether or not the candidate has experience in Spring Boot. And because the candidate forgot to put it in the resume, they just don't get shortlisted, right? And it just goes into a black hole. You never hear back. But now you actually get to know that, hey, Geektrust is expecting me to have experience in Spring Boot. And I actually do have that experience in Spring Boot. So I can edit my application and reapply. The other reason that it says that it's likely that I'll get rejected is because the Geektrust company, in this case, expects candidates to have a notice period of 1 month, and mine is 3 months. But you know what? I think I've heard that other developers in my company are probably, have been able to negotiate their notice period. Like my manager has been able to arrange a buyout, let's say. So it is negotiable. So maybe I can actually get my notice period negotiated with my current employer. So this is good. I can actually apply to this company and get my application through. So if that's the case, then I can go in here and I can edit. So for example, I can add Spring Boot. Just give me a second. Zoom is getting in my way. Yeah, I can add Spring Boot to my skills. And then I can actually come here and say, you know what, my notice period is negotiable. And maybe there's a buyout option. I'm not very sure. So I'm just going to say, maybe there's a buyout option for my notice period, right? So I go ahead and apply now. And now when I apply, my application was successful, right? So I got the information that I needed. I got to think about, is all my information up to date? Or is some of this actually negotiable? And I got to edit it and reapply to the company, right? And now I applied. And now it tells me that, okay, great, you have applied. And your next step is to improve your Geektrust score. So in this example, the profile that I'm using to demo this to you is one where I've already solved a Geektrust challenge. So I have solved a Geektrust challenge before, and I've got a score of 25. So it's telling me that, okay, great, thank you for applying. Your application is been taken in, but your next step is to improve your Geektrust score. And it tells you that this company, and I'm using Geektrust as a company here for demo, but you can think of it as Talent 500 or Coffee Beans or any of these other companies, right? So it tells you that the company you've applied to expects a minimum of 50 on your code. So you need to improve your code and submit it within a week, right? And we're telling you that that company will not consider your application if your score is less than 50. So what we're really trying to do here is to tell you what to expect next, right? And so that it helps you sort of prepare and take the necessary steps to move in your journey. So yeah, this is how the Geektrust process works, where you can apply to any of these jobs that you see here. And when you apply, we'll tell you if your application is through. We'll also tell you what the next steps in your application process is. And you can also come here and sort of look at the entire, the entire interview timeline as well, right? So you can get a sense of, what can I expect here? So I need to solve a Geektrust challenge. In this case, we know that I need to improve my score. And next, that there are going to be 3 rounds of interview. There's going to be a final round, and then there's an offer. And this is around the time that an account manager like Jayashree will also get in touch with you and walk you through exactly what to expect, right? Yeah, so this is the entire way to use, to apply to jobs on Geektrust. And this is critical for you to figure out the right job for you. At this point, I'd like to launch another poll. What kind of tech stacks do all of you work on or would like to work on? So Dennis, could we launch that poll? Great, so let's give a minute. Folks, really tell us what kind of tech stacks you'd like to work on so that I can help you figure out how to find those jobs on the platform. You can see some entries coming in. Amazing. Almost 70% of entrants are in. I'll give you a couple of more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right. So yeah, majority of people who are here want to look for jobs in Java and React. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So let me show you how to do that. So on the jobs dashboard, you have a set of filters. So like I told you, based on the detailed profile that you fill in, we will match you with the right kind of opportunities, and we will show those opportunities to you. So the highly recommended ones are the ones where you have the least chance of rejection, right? Because it absolutely matches your profile. And the ones that are a good match, there's probably something maybe missing in your profile or not, but go through the process of applying, because you could there's still a really good chance that your application will go through, right? So we've already curated this job dashboard for you, but you can go and you can change your filters. So for example, a lot of you wanted to look at jobs in React. So you could go in here and enter React, and you could add that in to look for a job. Maybe you want to work in a product company, so you might want to add filters based on that as well. If you're particular on the size of the company, you can enter that as well. And you can tell us a little more about locations you're open to, etc., and go ahead and apply the filters. I think in this case, they probably, I said backend. Let me try that again. Yeah, there we go. So Bangalore and React.js jobs, I had applied the wrong filter of backend alone, right? And that's why I didn't get any results. But if you look here now, you see all React.js jobs that are available in Bangalore. So you can go in here and really take a look at each of these jobs and really see what it is that they expect. So for example, this senior software engineer job at Talview is a full stack developer job. And these are the skills that they expect. They expect React.js, they expect JavaScript, Java, Python, etc. And you can figure out what technologies they expect, read through the JD, and go ahead and go through the process of applying, like I mentioned before. And the 4-step application that I showed you before, that's only needed to be done the first time. From the second time onwards, we directly land you on this summary. You can take a look at all your details and then decide if you want to apply or not, or if you want to edit some of your details here. Right. So this is the way for you to find the kind of jobs that most interest you, right? So go ahead, play around with the filters, change the role type that you're looking for, change the tech stack that you're looking for, change the location depending on what you want to do, and put in the domains that you want to, and you can land up with this dashboard where you can understand what all jobs are available. And if you feel like you're not able to find something, like we said, we always have our help channels open. So write in to help@geektrust.in, and we'll help you sort of figure out the job that matches your interest. Right? So this is on the entire job search journey. The most critical part of Geektrust is what I'm going to cover next, which is the coding challenges. So you need to upload code on Geektrust for you to build the new resume. So that is where you come and take a look at coding challenges on Geektrust. So we have a host of backend, front-end, and mobile coding challenges. So you can go ahead and choose any of them. We have some that are a little easier than others. And a typical Geektrust challenge can be done in about 2 to 4 hours. So you can go ahead and look through a coding challenge and get started, right? So I'm just going to pick one that you can just look through. So in the Geektrust coding challenge, we'll talk about, what is this challenge about? So in this case, this is a challenge about a subscription service, right? Where you can stream music and videos. So you can see that there are different plans for the subscription service. There's some top-up logic where you can add a top-up as a user who's subscribing to this, and then there's a goal of this program, right? So the goal is to be able to print out the date on which the reminder should be sent, and to figure out the total amount for renewal. So any coding problem, we give you the context, set up more information about what is this all about, and then we talk about what is the goal of your program. All the backend challenges on Geektrust are command line applications where an input is to be taken and an output is to be printed to the console. And you'd notice that here we have a starter kit that's available. You can download the starter kit for a particular language. This gives you a basic project structure and some instructions and a script available for you to install all the dependencies that's needed to get started on the project. So you can read through the coding problem, look at the tips that we have available, look at the starter kit, and then go into the sample IO, right? So for this problem, there are a set of input commands and some expected output based on this. So you can have a look at the input commands and their format, the output commands and their format, and also get some idea about the kind of scenarios you're supposed to execute, right? So for this particular input, this is the kind of output that is expected. So read through this thoroughly so that you understand the problem statement and the sample IO, and also get a sense, how we evaluate your code. Anish will be covering this in a lot more detail, so I'm not going to go into it specifically, but you can see that broadly, you get a score out of 100 for solving a Geektrust coding challenge. And here, there are 3 badges that contribute to 60% of your final score, which is readability, maintainability, and object modeling. So really clean code parameters is what we evaluate for, and they account for 60% of your final score. Your correctness, that is your IO, as well as your unit tests, correspond to 30% of the final score, and your ability to write build scripts contributes to 10% of the final score. So get a sense of how we evaluate this as well. So totally you will end up getting a score of 100 when you a score out of 100 when you finally solve the coding challenge. So once you're done sort of reading the coding problem, you can, download the starter kit if it is a backend problem. We don't have a starter kit yet for front-end coding challenges or mobile coding challenges. But for at least for the backend coding challenges, you can download the starter kit and start solving it in an IDE of your choice, right? So start solving. Once you're done solving it, you can zip your solution and you can upload it on Geektrust to run tests. So that's what I'm going to show you next. So you could come here and click on upload code. Now we have a set of instructions here, so do read through that clearly. And we also have help docs at help.geektrust.in where you can really read through the specifics in a lot more detail, right? So when you want to upload your code onto Geektrust, I think like Krishnan was mentioning earlier, it's not just about getting the input output correct, right? We evaluate for a host of parameters because we look at your ability to write clean code. And we understand that can at times feel a bit daunting. So we give you feedback when you upload the code. We tell you, what have you got right? What have you got wrong? And we even show you some examples of areas that you may not have gotten right. So in this example, I'm just going to choose a challenge. So I'm going to upload code for a course scheduling challenge, which is a backend challenge. I will pick my language, which is Java 1.8. I will pick the build tool, which is here. I'm picking Maven because I've written code for course scheduling in Java and Maven. And now I'm going to upload my code. So your entire source files need to be zipped together to upload on the Geektrust platform, right? So I upload the zip file. And now you'll notice that you have the ability to test code and submit your code, right? And we highly recommend that you test code. This is available again only for backend coding problems. We're working on getting it available for front-end solutions as well. So if you're solving a front-end coding challenge, just go ahead and submit it. We'll evaluate it and get back to you. But if it's a backend coding challenge, you can also test your code. Now, I just really want to call this out. It's very, very important that you realize that we have a very strong anti-plagiarism policy. And if you submit plagiarized code that you've copied from somewhere else, we will detect it and you will be banned from Geektrust, right? So do ensure that you are the sole author of your piece of code, right? So now let's test code. So now for the code that I have uploaded, you can run tests and you'll notice that we've begun to evaluate it on a host of different parameters. This can take about a few minutes to run. So let's give it that time and we'll start seeing the feedback come together.
Namrata, while the feedback comes in, there's a question around, where should I write code? Do I write it on Geektrust? Where should I do it?
Yeah, so write code on your own IDE. So I'm assuming each of you would have an IDE that you're comfortable with, or you can even use any other online IDE that's available in the market. Write your code there, download it, and then upload it to Geektrust by zipping it, right? So we don't have an online editor at the moment on Geektrust for you to write the code, but that's something that we are working on to be available at some point in the future. Does that answer it?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so I'm just waiting for this to run. If this takes a little longer, I can show you another example that I have already available. But what I want to sort of highlight is, don't hesitate to submit your code, right? Even if you've gotten one thing correct, go ahead and submit it. You can keep improving your code as you move along. So we constantly give you feedback and tell you where you've gone wrong with the code, right? And we're not going to hold that against you if you've gotten something wrong. So when you work on a real world project, that's true as well, right? You keep improving. It's part of the process. So, so do go ahead and submit your code and then keep improving it as you go along. So I think this is taking a little longer than usual. And so in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'll show you something I've already submitted. So I submitted a piece of code earlier, which is for which I got a score of 25. So you can go ahead and look at the report here, right? So, so the way to do that, again, if you've already uploaded the code, is you can look at it in your portfolio, which is accessible here on the left side, as well as from here from the top. And when you come in here, you can actually see what you've gotten right and what you've gotten wrong. So for example, for this C# submission, I've earned the readability badge because I am following the single responsibilities principle. My code is well structured across multiple files. But I made some mistakes in the code. So for example, it tells me that I have a lot of magic numbers in my code, right? Which means I've hard coded a lot of things. So, so the recommendation is to remove the instances of magic numbers. Now you may be wondering where you have magic numbers in your code, right? So when you click on view more, we actually tell you. So we tell you that, we found 33 instances of magic numbers in your code. We tell you what magic numbers are. And we give you an example as well so that you can really identify the error and go ahead and fix it, right? So similarly, you can see that you've not earned the object modeling badge. You've not earned the maintainability badge, and you've not earned the maintainability badge because you have a lot of code duplication, right? So again, you may be wondering why you haven't earned, what is the code duplication you have? So you can go in there and look at an example. So we say the below snippet from this particular .cs file is duplicated. So you can look through this and figure out what that duplication is, right? So broadly, the idea is this, where, when we take your code, we assess it for a bunch of clean code parameters. So, and we assign you a set of badges. These are the main badges that we assign you: readability, oops, maintainability, correctness, which is your IO, unit tests, and build, right? And there's criteria for getting each of these badges, right? And we tell you exactly whether you got the badge or you didn't get the badge. And we tell you why you didn't get the badge as well. And for some of these badges, you'll notice that there are multiple parameters that are taken into account to give you that badge, right? So you can read all of that feedback here. Like I also mentioned, we have a extensive help documentation at help.geektrust.com. So you can go in there and really read through why you've not earned a certain badge, look at examples. We've shown you bad code, we've shown you good code, we've shown you how to improve, right? Yeah, so this is essentially the entire, this is how you can leverage the Geektrust platform to accelerate your job search journey. Once you get a score of 30 on your Geektrust challenge, you become a Geektrust member, and you'll start receiving a lot of emails where you can start applying to jobs. You can come to the dashboard as well and apply to jobs, and we'll start taking your profile forward with all the companies on Geektrust. So that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Namrita, I think some questions have come which we have answered in the chat itself. So I think in the interest of time, we'll move forward.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Namrita. Thanks for that session. So folks, I think we have underestimated the time that it takes to run this session. It's the first time we're running an orientation session. So what we're going to do next is the clean code session. I understand if folks have already commitments past 12, feel free to drop off. But I would suggest, if you can do stay for the session, this is really important because we talk about how to go about writing clean code. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Anish, who's my colleague and developer at Geektrust. So he will talk about how do you go about solving a Geektrust coding challenge. Anish, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Krishnan. Hi, folks. My name is Anish. I am a senior developer here at Geektrust. And today I'll like to share some pointers on how to write clean code and essentially, get a good score at Geektrust. So let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you. So today, before we think about writing clean code, I just want to talk about writing Geektrust problems. Like Namrita have shown you, our problems are not really the standard competitive programming problems. So don't think of them like that. Instead, think how you would write production quality softwares. Where so as you read through the Geektrust problems, read it once, twice, as many times as you need to feel comfortable with the problem, and then try and identify real world objects in the problem, like say for example vehicle, or some nouns. Those will give you the domain of the problem, which can essentially become a class in your solution. And try to understand verbs in your solution, like try to understand verbs in the problem statement, which essentially would become the behavior or methods in your solution. And once you have these things figured out, it's just a matter of having them interact with each other to really build out the complete solution. And think do not think you are working alone. Imagine you are writing this code as part of a team. So it's necessary that your team is also, like, there is a team member, and it's necessary that they also are able to understand your code. Or you come back to this code maybe 6 months down the line, you are able to easily understand the code, right? So think of it from that perspective, and I think it will give you a lot more clarity on what clean code might be. So before we start how to write clean code, essentially, what is clean code? You might have questions. So the simplest way to think about clean code would be a code that is easily understandable by anybody else other than you. But that person might also be you 6 months down the line. When you come back to your code, or when somebody else looks at your code, do they have to spend a lot of time reading through the code, or is it easy to kind of get the intent of the code? If it is easy, it's a good start towards clean code. Any developer should be easily able to read the code, make changes to the code. So if it's easy to read, that means okay, sorry, I think I had some issue with the system. Okay, sorry about that. So a lot of these, like a lot of us developers, we don't always get to work on a new feature, right? Like it's a lot of times it's about fix a bug, enhance this feature, and that's essentially how software evolves over time as well. Look at any successful product that you might be using day in and day out. Gmail, Google search, Facebook, Insta. They don't look at all how they started off, right? And that's the real beauty of strong products. it's that they are evolvable, and so it has to be that we should be able to make bug fixes faster. We should be able to understand what is happening so that we can essentially come up with better enhance these features. So that means less bugs, so the maintenance cost comes down, less time, the less time the app spends in down, things like that. So that's really essentially why clean code matters. And now I'd like to share some pointers on how to start writing clean code. These are some of the basic pointers to writing clean code. So first things first, the simplest thing you could start doing is use proper naming conventions for your classes, variables, functions, methods. Essentially, anything that you write, write good, meaningful names that actually uh, reduces the cognitive load on the developer itself, right? Instead of writing var1, var2, write some meaningful name as to why that variable is required, and that will actually help you question if that variable is required or not, and if it's in the correct place, and things like that also is a benefit to that. But to start with, yeah, give proper names to the files. Don't give file1, file2, file3, function1, function2, function3. I myself have used to write these kind of functions, and then I would think, oh, I know I wrote the code, I'll never forget. But then just 2 months down the line, yeah, I am banging my head as to what does function1 mean, what does function2 do. Instead, I give better names. I'll give you some examples later. Yeah, and magic numbers are essentially hard-coded strings and numbers directly in your code, which kind of has a issue where you don't really know why that number was chosen, right? For I is equal to 0, I less than 502. Like, why is 502 the number chosen? Instead, take those numbers out and write it into a constant, and use that constant whenever you want to use that number, and give the constant a meaningful name, as the previous point suggests. And write modular programs. Do not write your entire code in a single file. Split your program into smaller chunks of um, useful modules that do one thing. It's very easy to navigate your programs. As software grows, if all you have is one file, or all you have is just one directory, it becomes harder to keep track of where to look for something when something goes wrong, or when you want to add something. Instead, if you had bunch of packages and folder names that actually with a good name, it becomes easy to navigate, and it builds an intuition as to where you might actually want to go look for some feature, or to see how things might work, or so to see how or to fix some bugs, essentially. Write small functions and methods. I used to write functions that were 500, sometimes 1,000 lines long, and when something broke, I don't know where to start looking for. I have to put the entire thing in a debugger, start from the top of the function, put print line, and to see where things might have broken. Keep things short. Give essentially have code that does something specific, put it into a method, call that method. It's much easier to call 10 methods than to have the code within 10 methods inside a single function, which is just, your head starts spinning when you start looking at these big code, right? Because there is so much logic there. If, for, inside, for, if, it's just, you don't know where to start, and excuse me, you start getting overwhelmed. Avoid writing duplicate code, as the name suggests. Don't have the same piece of code that does something, copy pasted 3 different places, 4 different places. What happens is, sometimes down the line, we have to change that piece of code, and now you have to figure out where that exact code was used in the code base. Maybe it was used 5 times, and you actually hunted down 4 places where it was used, but now you have introduced a bug because the fifth place does not, you forgot to add. So instead, declare methods, declare functions, or if it makes sense, have a class with methods on it. Put your code that you are using multiple times into that, and then call that method, because now all your any change you need to do to that piece of code, just go change in one place, and everywhere it's reflected. Excuse me. Write methods, so don't nest these control and conditional, like loop statements and conditional statements. You might have seen if inside, if inside, if inside, if excuse me, which is very again, it increases the cognitive load to figure out what might have been happening there. It's very hard, if inside, if inside, if, and there is an else. So maybe the else is the one that gets triggered, and trying to figure out what and how, what is the application that is actually trying to achieve. At the end of the day, it's about some sort of business logic that we want to achieve, and there might be some rich behavior there, but it's just convoluted in such a way that keep everything, put pull those things inside one, the outer if, into a method, and give it a meaningful name, so that you just look at the code and you figure out, oh, okay, this is something that the code is trying to do. Just to give you some examples, right? Don't declare foo, t1, t2, d. It's fine to start with these variable names when you're trying to get something to work, because your code cannot be clean in the first go. First make it work and then make it clean. That's the philosophy that I follow, and I believe it's not possible to write clean code in the first go. So whenever you write var d and then you wrote the entire logic and now it's working fine, you're getting the expected result, don't stop there. Go back, change the function name, give it a meaningful name. What essentially happens is it becomes clearer in your mind as well as to what is happening or how you actually ended up achieving your goal, which is very easy when so that it actually becomes very ingrained in your mind. Even after 2-3 months down the line, you would actually still remember how the basic flow of the program is, because you took the time to understand these things and put names, put meaningful names in this. I think it was Kent Beck, a famous computer scientist, who said, do put a lot of effort in your names, because they might look useless, because a compiler does not care if it's D or if it's elapsed time in days, but it's not for the compiler you're writing the code, it's for your teammates, because at the end of the day, somebody else might have to change your code, somebody else might have to read your code, and the effort they require is has to be minimal. We want to spend time building these amazing products, right, instead of debugging a mess. So yeah, these are some of the examples. Don't give a, we don't really know what A means and excuse me, or what N means. Instead, give useful names, decimal number, binary number. Okay. You don't even have to do a dry run. Here, you might have had to write out the code, what the output is, or put it in a debugger, put print statements all around, just to understand what might be happening here, so that we can understand what is this piece of code trying to achieve. On the other hand, here it's very it looks very easy to approach, because okay, there is binary number, there is decimal number, it's trying to output some, it's trying to do some binary operation there. It's very approachable, these kind of code, a nicely readable code. Here again, if you look here, what is 4? Why was 16 chosen? And if there is 16 somewhere else also, but and we want to change the 16 to 17, and we forget to change there. Is that a bug, or is that 16 unrelated to this 16? We don't know, right? It's just 16, no context there. Instead, if we actually pulled that down into a constant, that would actually mean give you some sort of excuse me, context. Okay, 16 now means the maximum password size of the thing. 4 now means the minimum password size. Okay, so wherever you want to use this 16, or like wherever you want to enforce the password's maximum minimum size, you can actually use this constant, and there is no confusion in anybody's mind. And you also here, if you look here, there is handle click function name, which is very generic, right? Like handle click, what click, what does that mean? Instead, what you're trying to achieve is actually we want to validate if the password is a valid password, and then we want to log in the user. I just got the context just by reading it. I didn't have to run anything. I didn't have to start up my runtime environment and start looking through doing a dry run, things like that need not be done. It's just very clear outright. Excuse me. So modularization, I would say, is the cornerstone of writing maintainable program. And if you think about it, it's not just in computer science, but any engineering discipline. Modularization is actually something that is that helps make the process of building better. I live in Bangalore, and I see these metro lines being constructed, and I see that they don't build the bridge where the track lays. What they do is they have these big blocks of cement blocks that they ship from somewhere else. I don't know where. It just comes there, and then they put it on top of the pillars, which is very handy. I can see it's very handy. Imagine the people who might be working there. It's if one block had an issue, you don't have to change the entire line, which might be hundreds of kilometers. You just have to remove the block, replace the block, right? And that's the same case with anything around you. Look at your laptop. It's made up of modules. There's RAM, there's keyboard, the screen, there's motherboard itself has, there's processor, there is different capacitor, there is how many modules, who knows. And you don't have to change your computer if or if your RAM goes bad. You just have to swap in your RAM, and excuse me, you just have to swap in your RAM, and that's it. There is no other issue. Go ahead. So the same thought process, if you apply to software engineering, what happens is you will be able to write these individual modules. The advantage being that, one, it is isolated. So any problems in that module, and you're able to test it individually. You don't have to put the entire program into some, run the entire program to figure out what might be wrong with this module. Just, write unit tests for this module. You'll be able to define some sort of interface to interact with this module. So you have the control as to not show how things work inside the module, just that this module does specific thing. That's about it. You press or you go, and any sort of anything. It's essentially a black box for everybody outside. They just have to understand the fact that how this module can be used, and is it reliable. If it is, you can use it. And the thing about modularization is actually is that you can individually test it. You can even swap out modules. Tomorrow you find a better library or a package that does the same thing as this module, but way better or way faster. You just have to swap in the modules, and everything else can remain as is, and your product is now better because of that. So to how would you go about modularization? Would be think about separation of concerns. So never excuse me, I'm having a small cough, so I know it might be annoying, but bear with me. Yeah, so have a separation of think about separation of concerns. Whenever you write a function or whenever you write a class, let's start with class, because that's the biggest standalone entity you can write. So think about the responsibility a class might have, and the everything in that class should be geared towards only achieving that goal, and only achieving that goal well. Yeah, there should not be anything else that the class does, and that thing can now be distilled down to methods. Whenever you write a method, that does one thing and one thing well. Never do things, never write a method that does 2-3 things, because then it violates the separation of concern. And then have one responsibility, the responsibility, it should handle it well, and a different responsibility, give it to some other method that handles it well. Here, if you look at the code, there is printing, and then there is there is 2 different responsibilities that this function is doing. It's not very modular. Instead, if you bifurcate it into different methods, one is factorial of natural numbers, another is sum of natural numbers. It's very obvious as to what these 2 pieces of code is doing. Here, if we had not color coded it, it would be very hard to figure out the fact that these 2 things were actually doing different responsibilities. Only the developer who wrote it would have understood the fact that, okay, this is here factorial, that is here number, like sum, and everybody else might have had to go through this code maybe a couple of times to figure out the fact that these are 2 different things. Why would a function do these 2 things together? Instead, separate them into different concerns. To even another thing that you might want to do is have these folders and packages. Use them wisely. Use them to group together code that does some things. You might have heard of MVC, model view controller patterns, where you put all your models in one package, your views in one, and your controllers in one. These kind of modularization achieves what happens is, like any change to entity, and there is no change that needs to go into the controller. You might want to just change the REST API, so you just need to go look at the controller. You don't have to do anything in the entity models, because that has nothing to do with the change that we're doing. So it's beneficial in that, and it also helps in navigating the code. You want to make some changes to something. Oh, this might be the package. Let's go look here. It's very you can build on your intuition slowly. If it's a modular code, if all you had is like one folder with 1,000 files, it becomes very hard to keep track of what file name, which file name. And usually what happens is files within package needs to be unique. So if you have multiple packages, you don't have to worry about if you had 2-3 different packages that kind of has files with the same name, because within that context the name makes sense. You don't have to now worry about keeping things unique and all. It just package gives you the context, and the file name can be same, things like that. Also also you can keep in mind single responsibility principle. Like, it goes hand in hand with separation of concern. You do separation of concern so that you are handling, like your classes and methods are only handling single responsibility. Always keep in mind your class should have only one responsibility. Your methods and functions also should have one responsibility. They should be doing that responsibility well, and together they should be achieving some overarching goal. Keep it simple and short. It's KISS in short. Like, so what happens is, if you have, keep things as concise and as brief as possible. Don't try to over engineer stuff. Here it's very it's not very clear as to what it is that we're trying to do. On the other hand, if you just refactored it to this, we just know that we're trying to filter users based, like we are trying to achieve some filter condition where we get a term, and then we're trying to see if that term matches any name, email, or role. It's very clear from this code. We don't need no comments or anything like that here, but here it might be helpful to like we might have needed comments here to help you understand. And I am a firm believer that comments should ideally only exist for your specification documents. What does the function do, how it does, and all. The code should be the one that should be telling you that. And to help you achieve that, keeping things as simple as possible will help you a lot. Yeah, don't repeat yourself. Like I said, don't have pieces of code that does the same thing. If you see you are using the same piece of code, 2 different places, 3 different places, put that piece of code in a function, give it a good name, make sensible parameters if those are required, and call that function multiple places. One, it will give you the opportunity to not having to look into the function as to what it is doing, because the function name is now well written, so you understand what it is that the function does. And secondly, you don't have to worry about any bugs that might creep in. If any changes that needs to be done, you only have to do it once, one place, and you don't have to worry about having missed some other places. So this is a small example as to how you might be doing. See here, we are washing vehicle. Wash vehicle is actually some process that is done, which is put into a method, and then it's called in multiple places. There are 2 schools of thought here, dry and wet. Dry means do not repeat yourself. Wet means write everything twice, but then anything beyond twice, you put it into a method. But then I am a strong believer of, even if you write it only twice, even if you're repeating it twice, just make it into a function and call it there, instead of having to because you might miss, you copy pasted it once here, you thought, okay, it's only twice, and somebody else copy paste the same code, some put there, and they might be thinking they have only copy pasted twice, but now it's actually 3 times, and it's very hard to keep track of these things, especially when it's a fast moving product. So things might break a lot. To avoid that, do not repeat yourself, period. That's it. Like you have to copy paste the same code twice. Start writing functions for those things. You can see some of the advantages of dry and some of the disadvantages of using wet. It's efficient, it's easy to fix, saves you time, more secure, as in you're sure now that there's only one place to make changes. Method complexity. So do not write these kind of nested loops and conditional statements. It just gets out of hand real quick. You might not know where to put the else, and it's very hard to see what is it that it's trying to achieve, and stuff like that. It just, instead, write code like this. Have a I personally never go beyond two nestings. For inside for, it might be okay. You might actually not want to nest at all. Just for, and if you need to write a for, call a function like here. There is a function one that is being shown here, which is actually a function which has an if condition inside it. So instead of doing that directly into the main for loop, you now put it into a function one. Don't give the name function one. Instead, you should put something meaningful there. Similarly, there is another for and if condition that goes into the condition two, which is now pulled into a different function. So and giving it better names, you just have to read it in the main method. There is a function called, oh, okay, this is what it does, how it does. If that is really required, we can go into that. If it's not required, we can skip over the fact that this is something it does, instead of having to really worry about what is it doing and then figuring out if that part of code needs change or not. So always refactor nested code. Avoid nesting at all costs. So I was actually planning to do a upload and run, but since my colleague Namrita has already done that, I'll probably skip over that. Command line application. So for our backend solutions, we expect that your program takes the location to a text file as the parameter, and the input is read from the text file. So all the input commands are read from the text file, and the output is printed to the console. The text file will contain the commands to the problem. So any problem that you take that just gives you, let me just show you that real quick. So just when you sign into your Geektrust portal and coding challenges, give it here. So take any problem and read through. You'll see there is sample IO here. So these inputs will be read from a file which is passed as an argument to your application. As to how to build your solution, you see here on the right side, there is build instructions. Click there, and we have build instructions for any language. These are the languages we support. And go there, check how to build the solution for the language that you have selected. And once you are confident, just go ahead and submit. Test your code. There is no limit as to how many times you can test your code. I would suggest starting with once you get your things up and running, test your code, see everything is working fine, see what is the feedback there, go back, fix on the feedback, come back again, test your code again, see what's the feedback. Keep that loop running until you are satisfied with your code, until you think your code is good enough. Only then I would suggest that you go ahead and submit it. Yeah, so that was the introduction to clean coding. Of course, there is I hope this was a good intro to clean code. There are more things. Code is never finished, right? You have to somewhere you have to draw the line and say, yes, this is clean enough. Maybe that's what I have to do. I sometimes compulsively change the name, break it into functions, do those things, but then I figure like I'm going nowhere. I have to call it quits. So I hope this was a good intro to clean code, and I hope you'll continue learning about clean code, how to write clean code, how to write great code and build awesome software. And thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Anish. Thanks for the session. It was super informative. So, folks, I think this brings us to the end of our session. The key thing to remember is Geektrust is helping you building your new resume, and driven by clean code at the center, and not just a Word doc with what you've done in the past. So we welcome you to this world of Geektrust, where the resume opens up a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities for you. As we're winding down the session, we just have a couple of polls to get your feedback in. So if you could please answer that, and then you can log off. So there'll be two polls. So please wait for one by one. It just should take a minute each for both. We'd love to get your feedback. The first one is on your screen already. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I think that covers most folks. Dennis, can you launch the second one too? All right. Thank you so much. You folks have been awesome. This is our first session where we're doing the orientation session. So thanks for your patience. It took longer than we expected, but overall your feedback will help us make this better and make Geektrust better in the future. You all have a great weekend. Thank you so much for coming. Bye.